For this week's Think Tank Central, I'm joined by Varda, a retired professor of molecular biology who volunteers for Mahsom Watch, an organization of Israeli women who monitor and report abuse of Palestinians under Israeli occupation. And from Yellin, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, Roy Yellin. Roy, Varda, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, before we get to it, I have to note that we tried to get Robert Ilitov, the sponsor of the bill, or anyone else from his party to come here to no avail. And I just assume that after Israel's Attorney General ruled that he could not defend this legislation in its current form, that they simply were uncomfortable in trying to explain themselves to our international audience. So let's start with you. And if this bill passes, or at least in the current form, how would it affect the work of your NGO over these past 30 years?
Well, supposedly it will cancel our video project in which we distribute video cameras to Palestinian volunteers who document their lives under the occupation and other human rights violations that occur as a result of it. However, we have no intention whatsoever of ending this project. Even if this bill passes, documentation of the occupation will continue no matter what piece of draconian legislation the Knesset will pass.
So dedicated and impassioned is your organization that you'll risk prison time?
We will continue to do what we're doing, and also we don't recognize the authority of the Israeli parliament to have any sort of jurisdiction over Palestinians or to legislate over the West Bank, which is not Israeli territory. So.
But under the legislation, if the Palestinians film what they film and B'Tselem, an Israeli organization, disseminates it, you're still subject to a criminal record. And
we will do what we have been doing in the past almost 30 years, and we will continue to do it.
Varda, how will this affect your organization? Will it dilute the fervor of, we must emphasize, volunteers? All volunteers.
All volunteers. We don't actually film regularly. We visit. Some of us do film, some others do not. We don't have anything to do with the actual soldiers. They are recruited, they didn't choose to be there. What we do really is to be there so that they are a bit gentler, a bit kinder to the Palestinians. Mostly we go to gates. All people who are passing gates have permits. So they have been already checked by all the authorities and found okay. There is no need to be cruel, to be high-handed, and if we're there, things are calmer.
And I have witnessed that many, many times. We should note to our international audience that Mahsom Watch, Mahsom is Hebrew for checkpoint, and indeed it does have a calming effect on the whole.
Now, we do film sometimes if we see, especially if we see something that is wrong, but we try very hard not to film soldiers' faces. Because that's not the point. The point is for the army to see that such things go on. And the army actually reads our reports and looks at our films that are put in our reports for their monitoring of what's going on, because usually in most gates the soldiers are there without an overseeing officer.
Let's move it over to Roy. And what is the likelihood of it passing in its current form? I understand it's going to be seriously diluted and changed, right?
With this Knesset and this government, it's really hard to assume or to make any sort of prediction. Everything is up in the air, and I wouldn't risk saying that it's not likely to pass. However, that said, I do think that even within this coalition and this sort of regime, they understand that at the time being, this is more damaging to their image internationally than improving their image internally. And I think it's not a coincidence that Robert Ilatov or other Knesset members refuse to be here. They're doing it for internal propaganda efforts, and they totally understand that internationally it's damaging. For Israel, it's taking the mask off of something that is, the situation in the West Bank is not democratic. However, Israel is trying to portray itself as a democracy. And this is sort of shedding the mask of the entire situation.
If it passes, what does this say for Israeli civil society and claims of being the only democracy, true democracy in the Middle East?
Well, it shows the situation just as it is. It's not a democracy after 51 years of controlling other people that are totally denied human rights and civil rights and political rights. Israel is controlling over 13 million people. Half of them enjoy civil rights and they vote for the Knesset, and like almost half of them don't have that. It's targeting journalists. Exactly. It's much more than us. We're maybe the scapegoat in this situation. However, you people should really worry because you are filming the majority of films of soldiers in the occupation is
and I know the Foreign Press Association has lawyers watching this very closely. Varda, you made a point, and it's important to expand on that, that this is not your operations and your activities are not targeted at the soldiers, it's at government policies, correct?
Exactly, because the soldiers sometimes have no choice. They didn't choose to be sent to war. And most of them just want to get home, safe and sound.
Yes.
No more than that. And so do the Palestinians, by the way.
The language in the bill accuses organizations like yours, and I quote, spending entire days standing near soldiers, waiting with bated breath for some action that they can respond to in a biased way in order to slander the army. Your response? This
citation that you just brought shows that the adjectives that you add to facts make the tone. Because, yes, we don't stand there full days because we are old women. We stand there for a few hours, no more. And we don't wait for something to happen in order to. Just the opposite. We wait to see that nothing is happening. And we film only when something is really wrong.